Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of America.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero, the show that revolutionizes personal engagement in the world and fortification of your life. Let's get to it. We're brought to you by Fox & Sons, foxandsons.com, the best place to get your BBC. I never start my day with anything less than BBC in my mouth, and I suggest if you like BBC, you go to foxandsons.com, get that big bold coffee, and put it in your mouth. foxandsons.com, promo code 0 at checkout for 18% off on any order $25 or more. That's foxandsons.com for that BBC big bold coffee. Put it in your mouth, baby. And the Mark Claire Show. If you enjoyed Mark Claire with Lions of Liberty, you're going to really dig the Mark Claire Show. Mark Claire has gone beyond the realm of politics to dig into the esoteric meaning of life in all sorts of different avenues, whether it be entrepreneurship, ghosts, goblins, Bigfoot, demonic entities, religion. Mark Claire is diving into all of it, and he's not afraid to tackle any task. So go check out the Mark Claire Show. Thank you, as always, Tom Burton, for the music. And you can find this show and many more at the libertarianinstitute.org. That's the libertarianinstitute.org. That's where you'll find me, Patrick McFarlane, Scott Horton, Keith Knight, Will Porter, Kyle Anzalone, and a host of other writers like Kim Robinson. Go to libertarianinstitute.org and keep track of everything that we are doing for you. This computer. Recording in progress. There we go. And I am here, Mr. Justin Campbell, once again. How are you doing, sir?
Good, real good. It's been a good summer. I've had a really good summer.
Man, it's been brutal here. I'm so tired. I was doing millworks today, so I was out in the heat carrying doors and trim and all that good jazz. So yeah, I'm about worn out today.
I was it's funny, we kind of have an industry commonality because I worked in lumber for a while with Lowe's, and then I was a millwork sales specialist for a little over a year and sold all those windows and doors and trim jobs and everything. So yeah, I the specialists at Lowe's, we had to get all that stuff together so that the drivers could take it out. So I know what a pain in the ass it is gathering up all that stuff to get it ready to go on the truck. I can't imagine just having to actually take it out there and do the delivery side of it.
Well, when I was with Bison years ago, I was a millworks driver, and I did that for 5 years, and that's what I did. And with Bison, it was a lot different than it is with McCoy's. It's just the way it's set up. Bison did everything in-house, so we built the doors, we did all that stuff in the shop. And what they had done is they had bought used FedEx trucks, because FedEx gets rid of their trucks at like 200,000 miles, and you still have a lot of tread on those trucks at 200,000 miles. So Bison would buy the used FedEx trucks, turn it into a 20-foot straight truck, right? And we would use that. So when it came to trim, it was a lot easier, right? You back it up into a dock, you bring the door rack over, you set it by the trailer, and you just haul everything straight in there. You bring the trim in, you just push it in long ways. And a lot of these trim packs were small enough where with me and my helper, I could get on one end of it and pick it up and just start walking, and he'd come catch the other end, and we carry that whole trim pack in. So it made it really quick, and there wasn't a lot of leaning and bending and all that. Well, with McCoy's, we're using a 20-foot gooseneck. So it's a lot of leaning over, bending over, and it just wears you out, the constant, especially, I mean, here I am 20 years later, right? I was doing millworks in my 20s, and here I am 20 years later trying to do the same stuff I did back then. And I'm like, man, it's a different thing. Recovery's different. Everything's different. And it's just been a brutal summer down here. It's one of the more brutal summers we've experienced here in the recent past. So it's been really dry, really hot. And I mean, I said it yesterday in our group chat. I mowed 2 days ago, and everything I mowed is dead. It's just brown now. It's like so.
Yeah, we've had some pretty dry spots here through the summer, but we've also had a lot of rain, and it's either one or the other. We can't seem to have a nice balance. So for most of the month of June, it was completely dry, and I was watering our garden every day. And then most of July, it rained every week, and so I didn't have to water anything, but I was having to mow twice a week to keep up with the grass growing.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Darn climate change.
Yeah, it's been one of those summers. And usually summers like this, these are types of summers that we can, start expecting hurricanes. So we get a summer like this every 7 to 10 years, and it makes you nervous because that high pressure is going to move out, and they were already talking about a tropical depression forming in the Gulf at the moment. So I think
we are coming up within a week or two of what is typical hurricane season in that part of the country. So
yeah, it's usually into August, beginning of September. Yeah, so
yeah, lots of fun. Yep. I remember living down in the Mississippi Delta, and you have hurricane week where you just batten down the hatches and buy a lot of bourbon and beer, and everybody would hang out and get their generators running and wait for it to blow through, and then go back to work and see what the damage was.
Yeah. Yeah. My buddy would always call those rock me like a hurricane parties. So we just spend a week just hanging out, drinking, and whatever. We can't go anywhere. We're flooded in. So
yeah, like somebody would drive by the facility every day in the morning and then in the afternoon to make sure that nothing was like damaged and needing immediate attention, but otherwise it was just like hang out and don't do anything stupid and hope that you don't get the phone call at 8:00 in the morning that there is something wrong at the facility and you have to go in. And because we did have that the second year I lived down there, a big ground pile of corn, one of the corners of the tarp that was covering the corn pile had come loose, and so like 8 of us had to go in there and pull the tarp back down and get it all, like everything screwed back down and nailed back down and back in place and covered up in the middle of like 50-mile-an-hour wind and driving rain. Like we're out there trying to recover a fucking pile. It's it's going to happen at some point, but it's one of those things that like you hope it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. There are other places you'd rather be at that moment.
Right.
So, well, hey, I wanted to get your thoughts. You keep up more with the news than I do. I'm not a big news person, and I know that you kind of pay more attention to the news than I do. So what happened with this old man in Utah that got shot by the FBI? What was going on with that?
I have mixed emotions about the whole situation. So this old dude, if you've seen pictures or anything of him, like he's probably pushing 70, not in good shape, 300 pounds, walks with a cane. Like this dude's clearly not a national security threat. I think the only threat that he is to a buffet somewhere. Like he's not actually going to kill the president or anything. But at the same time,
like that Larry the Cable Guy joke where he talks about his sister getting her belly button pierced. He's like, "Oh, you got a hitch."
Yes.
Finally, you did something useful. Now he can pull you away from the buffet every once in a while.
Well, and this dude with his cane, like if you're trying to keep him away from the buffet, just hide his cane. He's probably not going to make it. Like he was clearly not in good shape.
Yeah.
Not a national security threat. But at the same time, he was engaged in an exceptional amount of shit of what we call Fed posting, like just the dumbest shit that you could think of, nonstop. I mean, I get it. Biden's horrible, but there's some things that common sense just says you don't say it out loud, and especially not on fucking Facebook, right? So he's posting this shit like on a daily basis. And
was he getting suspended off of Facebook doing this, or was he getting?
I'm not aware that he was, because all the screenshots and stuff that I saw of it were like people scrolling through his timeline and this stuff just there. So they weren't like, obviously Facebook didn't think he was a threat either. Or they were trying to to allow a case to be built against him. Either way, the feds show up at his place and ask him questions. He is confrontational and non-cooperative. There are reports that he also flashed a gun at the feds who came to question him. They came back more than once. Like they didn't shoot him on the first interaction that they had, but he kept pushing them to the point that somebody felt like he may be a legitimate threat, because he actually pointed a gun at somebody. So like I said, I have mixed emotions about the whole thing, because number one, this dude's clearly not a threat. He's a dumbass, shit posting and being stupid. The best thing that could have happened was whatever Fed was looking at his posts, just tell Zuckerberg, delete the dude's account, suspend him, and don't let him come back. He's clearly an idiot. Like, he's obviously not a threat to national security. He's not going to hurt anybody. He's not physically capable of getting out of his house to the point that he could actually attempt to assassinate a president or some shit like this.
Yeah, because
like,
he was talking about ghillie suits and all kinds of crazy shit.
Right. Just take his account away and don't let him have another. Like, some people do need to be censored, not because they don't have a right to free speech, but because they need to be protected from their own stupidity. And this was one of those cases. Like, just remove his account. Don't let him do this. And then when the feds show up, just cuff the guy and give him a night in jail to realize that this is for real. Like, don't keep coming back multiple times until he finally waves a gun or points a gun at somebody and gets shot. Like, this dude was not in the right by any means. Yes, there are First Amendment rights, but at the same time, I kind of felt about it the way I felt about people going to Parler and what was the other like Twitter alternative that popped up there for a little while that was supposed to be like this free speech platform.
Mayway or MeWe or however you say it.
I can't remember. There was one other one. Anyway, these things popped up and they're supposed to be free speech platforms. And then all these people go over there and start saying the most just rancid, horrifying shit. And then they get their accounts suspended.
Like, Gab. There was Gab too. Yeah.
Gab, that's the one. Anyway, but they're like, you're supposed to be free speech, and I said all this horrid, like terrible shit, and you suspended me. It's like, yes, like you have free speech, but there's also like there's an extent to which you have to be, somewhat civilized and
cool your jets, bro.
Right. Like don't be actively fucking retarded about it. And I kind of felt that way about this guy's post. Like, I don't think our founding fathers, when they allowed the right to free speech, meant that you should say, I'm going to shoot Joe Biden. I think they meant that you
If
should
they
be able
knew
to.
Joe Biden, they would have said that.
You may very well be right. But looking at the things that they were writing and the things that they were saying and the things that the colonists were being punished for by the British at the time, they were meaning like intelligent criticism of what's going on, not belligerent Fed posting. You get what I'm saying? Like, I think there has to be a line of what's intelligent and what's just garbage.
Well, I mean, and it was said by multiple of the founding fathers that the idea of freedom was a designated right for a virtuous people, right? They would say that only a virtuous people could keep a free society. So there was kind of this understanding of some kind of standard that they would keep, right?
Right. And I think that's somewhere with a lot of the First Amendment arguments that we get are the people who tend to make that, oh, well, what about my freedom of speech, have divorced themselves from having any level of standards. They want to just say the most god awful shit and not have consequences for it. And it was like we were talking about before the show, like with my son. If you've been allowed to go for so long without any consequences for something, then you don't believe that there are consequences for anything that you may do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we've hit is on both sides of the aisle, both the left and the right, they have been allowed to say a lot of things on social media that would not be allowable in polite, civilized society, because let's be honest, that's not what we live in anymore. And then when they start to get punished for it, they lash out because they haven't had consequences. It's this guy, when the feds show up and start questioning him about his posts and stuff, like he was getting mad and belligerent with them and making his I have a First Amendment protection, blah, blah, blah argument. Like, well, no, you really don't. When you've made, even though they aren't credible threats, they are still threats, and they have to be viewed as such. If somebody tells me that they're going to come to my house and shoot my family, I'm going to retaliate in kind, probably proactively. As someone who's worked in maintenance for many years, preventative maintenance is a lot more effective than reactionary maintenance.
Yeah.
So corrective maintenance. So if somebody threatens to shoot my family, I'm probably going to deal with the threat beforehand rather than afterwards. That's where we are when you're making posts like that. It's and I'm guilty of saying some pretty rancid shit myself online. I get a little carried away from time to time, but you've got to be mindful of the way that you're doing it and what your target audience is, and are you singling people out in particular? Like there's an intelligent way to go about saying terrible things where that you have some level of, you're not making a direct threat. You get what I'm like?
Yeah. I mean, part of the way I use any social media nowadays, to me, it's just all a joke. And so I never say anything that should be taken 100% seriously in any way, shape, or form. If I even take the time to get on there and say anything at all. So, because what I realized is what's happened with social media, it's something that it's tricked our brains into almost recognizing like Facebook or Twitter as like a campfire chat. And it's not a campfire chat. You're not sitting around a campfire with your boys and no one else is looking in and listening into your conversation. There's you're saying things that you could probably get away with. You could get away with 100% in any other atmosphere, but in a public fashion with a megaphone so that the world can hear you, right? And it's like, yeah, I don't know if I necessarily want to be involved in talking there, you know?
I get it. Yes, I know entirely. I have managed to land myself on a couple of feminist hate lists because I have said some things in replies to people who I consider friends that are considered inflammatory, and then when the right person sees it, then they tell all of their friends, and then you get attacked by the feminazi brigade and end up on 3 different like target lists that call you a male chauvinist and Nazi and everything else. Like, yeah, it feels like when you're in the replies with the people that you're familiar with and very possibly even have met and know in person. Like it's really cool how many people that I interact with on a regular basis on Twitter I've actually met in person, like you and a lot of people in our group chat, and like it's really amazing. It's not just the an online community, but we actually have like real world connections to each other.
Right.
So it can feel like we're just friends chatting, because we are to a large extent. But yes, there are also the potential for like literally a billion other eyes on that conversation, and they may not be as cool with what we would say in our private chats as what we are. So yeah, it is an interesting space to try to wade through, especially with stuff that could be considered inflammatory.
Well, it's like there was that I made a comment on Eric from Rebel with a Cause.
Yep.
Yeah, so I made a comment on one of his tweets one time, and he was making some stupid joke after his divorce about, am I loading the dishwasher correctly? And he had this butcher knife point up, right, in the dishwasher. And I said, yeah, I was like, no, that's not the safest way to load a dishwasher unless you're looking at putting an end to everything tomorrow. And I got suspended for 7 days for saying that. And it was just an innocent joke on my part, you know.
I've got a buddy that's from Canada, and he posted a video of like these Canadian farmers that had like a tractor and were pulling an inner tube and just like out in the middle of a field covered in snow, throwing people off of this inner tube as they just drive this tractor around in circles. And it's fucking hilarious. And I just commented on the post. I said, you crazy Canadians, I got suspended for 5 days for hate speech because you can't call them crazy Canadians. It's like, it was a fucking joke. I don't. And I'm sure it's because some very polite Canadian that he's also friends with that I'm not saw that and was like, oh, you can't call us crazy, and reported me.
Maybe you would have been all right if you said, you snow monkeys be wild.
You're probably right, because they wouldn't have known what that meant. Like,
oh. So I mean, we've all done this shit though. We've all said some stupid shit, and we've all gotten suspended for shit that you're like, what the hell is wrong with you people? I remember when I got suspended for making that comment on Eric's tweet. I actually screenshotted it and texted it over to him. He was like, what?
I wish there was a way for like, because I've seen that as well. I've had people send me screenshots, and it's like, I commented on your post and then I got suspended. Like, there should be a way to report the suspension, to be like, hey, we're friends. Like, this is cool. Don't remove this.
Don't
leave this guy alone. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, can't we just interact with our friends? Isn't that the whole point of these social spaces? Or at least it was, back when this whole shit started. it was to interact with your friends. Like that was why Facebook started. That was why we had MySpace. That was why we had MSN Messenger. Like
That is
it
not
was
why
to
the CIA did not spend money to create these things so you could communicate with your friends, man. Quit lying to yourself.
well, by God, that's the way it felt, especially when we had MySpace and you could set your top 10 or top 8 friends. And then if you didn't have somebody in your top 8, then they would get mad and take you out of their top 8 too. And, when back when life was simpler, I don't know if you were in on the MySpace thing.
No,
That
I
was when
never
I
I
was in
never
college.
messed with MySpace. I actually didn't even start a Facebook until 2012 because I didn't even have a I got my first flip phone in 2010. I got my first iPhone in 2012. I mean, I just did not even see this coming.
I guess I'm in a unique position where I'm that right age where I was in college when Facebook started, and it was exclusively for college students. Like you had to have your .edu email address to be able to, and your school had to be registered with Facebook. So like Facebook came out in 04. Murray State didn't get registered with Facebook until 05. Might have been even like January of 06. So like there for the first while, I would have like people that I would chat with on MSN Messenger who went to bigger like SEC schools and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, are you on Facebook?" Yeah, I'm like, I literally can't be on Facebook. Like, I'm not allowed. My school isn't registered with Facebook yet. And then when they opened it up, and it didn't matter if you just had to have an email address to register. You didn't even have to be in college. Then it was like, oh no, they're gonna destroy this. And then sure enough, that's what they did. And like you could like set your classes for what classes you had and see who else was going to be in the class, and you would have like group chats for the class to catch each other up on what, like if somebody missed or if you had a homework assignment or something. Like it was cool. I mean, it was meant to interact with your classmates and your friends that you went to school with, and with your friends from other schools, and see what they were doing and stuff. And then it became what it has become, and yeah, it's a lot less communing with your friends oriented than what it used to be. And I'm not willing to let go of that. Like I've largely just want to shoot the shit with my friends, and because I don't see most of my real life friends on a very regular basis anymore, because we've all kind of been scattered to the wind and all over the place. I want to use social media to interact with my friends, and I want to do it the way we would do it if we were all sitting right here in the room together, fucking off. Like, and the way it has become monitored and censored and politicized, it makes it hard to do that a lot of times. And you have, like I was talking about at the beginning, like you have to be kind of mindful of what you say and the tone and manner in which you say it, because it may just be a joke between me and you, but there may also literally be 100 other or 1,000 or 1,000,000 other eyes on it that they don't take it as a joke. They take it as a legitimate threat. And it's really kind of unsettling in some ways, and also sad. Like we can't just interact with each other like we naturally would, even though there's nothing natural about interacting with each other on a fucking computer, via social media. But to be able to mimic those interpersonal connections, it was really cool. And then to see it get bastardized and monitored and censored is really disheartening.
Well, I think where the mistake came in is people wanted to use this social media as like a modern day telephone, right? In order to communicate with their friends and their loved ones. And it was actually developed as a social experiment. not as a tool of communication, right? And we saw that very early on. I guess it was like 2000, was it 2014, when all the stories were coming out about the experimentation that Facebook was running on making people angry or happy, or and they were they were moving around and adjusting what you would see on your timeline to kind of calculate your mood and move you in certain directions. And so it became very clear why InQtel was dumping money into social media organizations whenever they started doing these societal manipulations. And it became very clear to me that this was all about like social control and moving people in certain directions. And they were experimenting on how to do that through your voluntarily communicating and interacting on these social media platforms. That it had nothing to do with you connecting with your friends. That was all just like the bait to lure you in.
I think there's a significant, if not incredibly vast majority of the people who don't realize their timelines are being manipulated. Even still, like, yeah, that still happens.
Oh yeah, I imagine it does.
Through the way you interact with other people, through the posts that you like, share, the stuff that the ads that you click on. Like, yeah, everybody jokes about, I talked about looking at a air fryer, and then I pull up Facebook and now there's 3 air fryer ads that pop up within the first 9 posts that I scroll past. Like, everybody knows about that, but also the things that other people post that show up on your timeline, as opposed, like if you spend a lot of time clicking on political ads and stuff that like the rage porn type stuff, you might also see exclusively the posts from certain friends of those things. So it's friends that you interact with regularly, but you're not going to see the pictures of their kids. You're not going to see the pictures of their wife. You're not going to see the good, wholesome stuff, or, that sort of thing. You're going to see the rage bait stuff that they either post or share. Like, it's, you're kind of crafting your own experience with the way you interact with stuff. So, like, I mean, I've been trying to, since I split my Facebook accounts and I have the one that's exclusively for the podcast and more political stuff and things like that, and then I have my like regular account that's, I post pictures of the kids and our family vacation and stuff like that. And I can't help it. I still post some political stuff on there because I do have friends who I know engage with that don't follow my specifically for that account. So there is some stuff that, like, if it's something that's important that's happening, I'll post it there because I do want everybody to see it. But by and large, I try to keep it away from that kind of stuff. And on that same token, on that account, my like normie account, I try to like people's pictures of their kids going back to school and comment on their family vacation, and try to, if I see ads that are stuff that might piss me off or make me want to like react in a certain way, then I'll tell Facebook, like, I don't want to see this ad. I'm not interested in this. Like, I'm trying to, on that account, I'm trying to craft my experience where it is where I'm interacting with my friends. But the average person doesn't realize that you can manipulate your own algorithm by doing that kind of stuff. So a lot of them are going to sit around and they're going to see the rage bait shit all the time. And the more you see that rage bait, the more you're going to feel that. And the more you're going to kind of take that perspective into life. And what's the saying about, I will not be a victim of my circumstance. I make my circumstance. I can't remember who said that. Anyway, that's not how I feel about social media. I'm trying to craft my circumstance to meet what I want to see in my world. and I
Right.
don't want to see a bunch of rage bait shit. I have a very good job and an amazing wife, and at least most of my kids are above average, and uh, I enjoy things, and I try not to spend a lot of time dwelling on stuff that is going to piss me off or give me negative feelings about stuff. And when I see something good in the world, I just try to accept it as good. Like I have friends that every time something good comes along, they're like, "Well, how long before this turns to
What's the
shit?" Like,
catch?
yeah, what's the catch? Where's this going to go bad? Like, how is this actually some sort of a fed plant that's just here to give us hope so they can snatch it away from us and dash our dreams? Like,
Right.
I can accept the good for the good while it's good, and if it does go bad, there'll be something else good. It's not like all good has been ripped from the world. You just kind of need to figure out how to craft your narrative and find it. And there are a lot of people who spend exactly zero time even thinking about or acknowledging that any of this political shit exists at all. And they just post pictures of their kids and their family vacations and Bible verses, and like they have wholesome shit that you can go find. Like if you see just one post from that person, just click on their timeline and like every fucking thing. Just like it all. They can think that you're stalking them. It's fine. That's your timeline cleanse. Like that's how you game the system to get some joy out of life, because we're all going to the same place at the end, like, right? Well, maybe not all of us, but we're all going to die at some point. And if you're not getting some joy out of the things that are good in this world, like I can't imagine that it would be a good experience. I'm
I'm thinking about what you're saying, and I'm one of the things that popped into my head is it's like when I was like seriously engaged in social media and I was really paying attention to what was going on there. It was funny because I would notice periods of time when I wouldn't see people's tweets or people's Facebook posts or whatever. And I'd be like, what's going on with such and such? And I'd go search their name and find them. And then I would see that they had just like posted or tweeted like 5 minutes ago. And I'm like, why isn't this posting on my timeline? Because it had nothing to do with what I was normally engaging in. But sometimes you just want to hear from your friends. You just want to know they're doing all right, and you want to see what's going on in their world. And the second thing that popped into my head was I listened to Glenn Beck's episode where he interviewed the guy that got killed in Utah's one of his friends from church. And they said they had never seen his social media presence. They had no idea what was going on there. And I can't help but wonder what that guy's timeline looked like before he wrote all these things. Like what he was looking at, where his mind was being manipulated and drawn into, and how they got those dark recesses of his mind to jump out and end up on Facebook, and how he was being manipulated.
Isn't that something that you have to wonder about? Like anytime we see somebody that kind of flies off the handle and everybody says, oh, they were, totally, like we never saw anything like that out of them. Like what was coming across their Facebook feed on a daily basis? What was the Twitter algorithm showing them? What was YouTube suggesting for them at the end of that video that they're like, oh, I've got to go watch that. That's going to so piss me off. And then as soon as that's over, you get 3 more suggestions and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. This is outrageous. Until you finally get them worked up into a frenzy, like, because it's like a fucking drug. It's like the comparison has been made before with social media being like a drug, like the getting the likes and the retweets and the shares and the comments and all of this stuff.
Yeah, the dopamine hits and everything.
It's that constant stimulation, and you got to have it, and you got to have it, and then once you get it, you got to have some more. And it's why, for as much as it's made fun of, the touch grass thing is a real thing. Like, sometimes you just need to put it down and go outside.
I've noticed I'm so much less interested in online since I stopped driving over the road. Like online, when I was over the road, online was like my only communication really with the outside world. My wife would call me at the end of the day, but for the most part, it was online, and that was it. Because I didn't have any interest in going in a trucker's lounge at a truck stop and listening to all the truck drivers bitch about driving truck. Like, I know what it's like to drive a truck. I don't need to talk about it. I drive a truck every fucking day. Like, so I wanted other stimulation, other communication, other things to talk about. I'm sitting on the road 11 and a half, 12 hours a day, staring at the road. I don't want to hear you talk about it for the last hour of my day. I've already experienced it all day long. So I would look for other stimulation, and that's how I ended up in the online, like, kind of podcasting world and meeting people like you and Pete and all these guys that I consider such good friends. And there were absolutely good things to come out of it, but there were also bad things to come out of it, like, and there's a give and take there, and you got to figure out how best to use it. But I have such little desire to utilize that world in the same way I did when I was driving over the road, now that I'm home every night. Right.
Well, and you've also got the advantage of you've got your dogs and the ducks, and you've got stuff going on at home. It's the same for me. When I'm on the days that I don't work, I get up in the morning and I'll eat breakfast, and then I put my shoes on, I take my shirt off, and I don't go back in the house again for the rest of the day. Like, if I'm interacting on social media at all, it's when I'm sitting down under a tree, drinking a bottle of water and trying to cool off, and just like popping in to see what's going on. And I'm probably not interacting very much, because as soon as I get done drinking this bottle of water, I'm going back to weeding the garden, or I'm going back to mowing or weed eating, or working on the chicken coop, or, messing with the goats, or going for a run, or lifting weights, or like anything. My days are spent outside in the sun, just doing stuff and not worrying about that stuff. And even with my own show, a lot of times, like, yeah, I'll talk about political stuff and things that I think are important. I talk about news articles and some of the stuff that's going on with the Supreme Court and with Congress and political, the upcoming elections and stuff like that. But at the same time, I do dumb stuff. Like, I had an episode where I talked about the 16 traits of masculinity and things that are or aren't considered masculine, and misgendering pets, and like, I'll do silly dumb shit that, like, I can't help but laugh when I read it, because I know the person who wrote it is serious about it, but it's just so dumb and funny. And like that, I like to have an opportunity to disconnect from serious shit and just talk about dumb shit and have fun with it. Like, that's I love the opportunities that I get to do that. Like, I do the morning show thing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we talk about some serious stuff, but every episode we make each other laugh and talk about dumb shit too. We do, like, me and Buck, Matt Erickson, Tho, and Mark Metz. We all do, and Jim McGill. We all do a sports show, and we talk about the NFL and college football, and it's an opportunity to not think about the serious shit in the world, and to just talk about a game, and and have fun interactions with each other, and poke fun at each other and laugh, and just, like, shoot the shit with the guys about football. Like, the world really is a beautiful place if you step back and just have a little bit of fun with it, and not be quite so serious all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I still can't watch the NFL, man. Like, I just can't do it. I mean, it's not the same game I grew up watching, man. So it's like, if I turn it on now, it's like, the hell are they doing? Like, it's like, what penalty is that? Like, where did this come from? Now you can't even touch a shoe, like,
You should watch the show because it never fails. Almost at least once a week, it devolves into me bitching about how a defensive back got called for something that back when I played, we'd try to knock that guy's head off.
yeah,
Like,
you can't
but
hit people going over the middle anymore. It's like,
I know
this isn't football, man. You're not even allowed to sack the quarterback. You got to touch him below the waist. It's like, I don't know. I don't understand.
yeah,
I just don't get it. So I just don't watch it. I just gave up on it. I'm like, no, it's beyond, it's beyond woke. It's broke. It's there's something wrong with it. So I watch UFC because I like full contact sports. So,
I've gotten into a kind of a different way of watching football. I'll watch with my kids. And oddly enough, my daughter is actually more attentive than my son is whenever we're watching the football games because I was a West Kentucky All-Star as a defensive back, and I understand game planning and strategy and like the way the defensive formations and everything are set up and what the offense is trying to do, and so like we'll sit there and we'll watch a play and the way it'll break down, and if it's like a really good play or if the offense has like a really bad breakdown and it goes south, like I can back it up and then replay it and be like, all right, so here's where this guy messed up. Here's where this guy missed his assignment. Like, look, this guy is supposed to, and like break down the play and explain the way it should work in practice versus the way it ends up happening on the field, and
right.
and kind of like do an analysis of it. And like I said, my daughter, like she really pays attention and like asks questions and stuff, and she thinks that kind of stuff is cool, and she's got a very analytical mind. And so I've been able to find like a different way to enjoy football other than like, yes, I do have the weekends that I work and the kids are with their mom and I just put a football game on and it's something, that I don't have to think about and just watch while I kind of rest and get ready for work. But when I do have that opportunity with the kids to sit down and like watch a game and really break it down analytically and talk about it, like it's really fun for me, and it gives me a different experience with the game. So I get enjoyment out of it in a different way than a lot of people do. But it's cool.
Yeah. I just miss the days of, just
smash mouth, knocking
the hell out of them.
Yeah.
Just beat the hell out of them, So, but that's, if they were, if whoever the newest quarterback is in the league were to sit back in the pocket for 10 seconds waiting for his receiver to get open downfield back in the 70s, he'd be picking himself up out of the mud. It's like you didn't have that type of like an enjoyment back there. You weren't comfortable back there. So I don't like it. I just can't watch it. I'm like, so, but all right. So I wanted to touch on the reaction of the conservatives to this guy getting shot in Utah. I found it interesting. It almost felt like they were almost trying to will it to like create it as a George Floyd moment for the right. And I was like, this is kind of a weird hill to want to die on, guys. Like, what are we doing here? Who was this guy? What was he saying? He was saying all this crazy crap online. Why are you, why are you defending him? And they were trying to like turn that Kathy Griffin skit where she had the mock head of Donald Trump into like some kind of real threat and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know, man. You're kind of, it felt like they were really pushing, this victim card on this guy that got shot when it was like, he did kind of set himself up for failure here.
I would have thought that the right would have been, and maybe it's because of the Trump stuff and the way that the Biden DOJ and FBI have gone after Trump on all of this ridiculous bullshit constantly, like nonstop for the last 3+ years. Maybe it's because of that the right has kind of soured on the feds. But when you see the reports of the way this guy was acting towards these federal agents that were coming, by all means, to just ask him some questions, not being hostile with him, not, just wanted to talk to him about the situation. The way he behaved towards them, if you saw I hate to bring it around to this, but we've seen it on more than one occasion, and we've seen the right react in this way. If you have a black man who jacks his jaw to a police officer in the same way that this guy was talking to these federal agents, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, fuck around, find out." Well, I mean, yes, I understand the Kathy Griffin or the Kathy Griffith and all the other comparisons, but those are also one-offs. Like, they did that, and they also said a bunch of dumb shit. But like the one picture of Kathy holding the severed Trump head up, that was a one-off. That wasn't every post that she made for 3 weeks straight.
Right.
Like,
well, I mean,
again,
that
like,
kind of was like everything they said for like 4 years straight, honestly.
Yeah.
but
but not exactly, like, not in the
not in such a direct fashion.
right. And that's kind of where the nuance of the way you word things and the way you go about saying things online, and you have to think about the potential audience, the ones that are watching from the background, the ones that when you set the post to private, it's just between you and them. You got to think about that audience and the way that'll be perceived. And so you have to, you word things vaguely. I've been accused of speaking like a politician and not giving straight answers and stuff. But sometimes that's the way you have to do your social engagements when you're saying stuff like that, because otherwise it could be viewed as a veiled threat or a direct threat. And then you have the feds knocking on your door asking you questions about it. Whereas, and I believe, I may be wrong, I believe the Kathy Griffith post got taken down. I think some of those others that were considered direct threats did get taken down, and like people screenshotted it, and yeah, the nobody ever investigated them for that stuff. But again, it kind of like this guy, were they ever valid threats? And this guy probably never would have had a problem if they had shown up and he'd just been like, "Yeah, I was running my mouth. Probably shouldn't have done that. I'll stop doing it." But he not just popped off to the officers who came to his house, but like was antagonistic and hostile towards them and brandished a firearm. Like, they're
well, I heard they bashed his window in, and like I don't know. I had heard a story where they like knocked a window in and came in through his window, and that's why he had brandished a firearm.
I don't know. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I might
no,
have
yeah, it was like I said, it was like Glenn Beck interviewed one of his neighbors, and they were like, "Yeah, why did they have to come in there with battering rams and not bash his window in and blah blah blah?" And then another issue they had was they had after they shot him, apparently they shot him in the house, and then they drug his body out of the house and just left it on the sidewalk for like neighbors to see. So like the neighbors' kids were seeing this guy just laying there, and they all went to church together. Like the way they, from what I understand in Utah, the way they set it up is they build churches within the neighborhoods, and you just walk to church, and so everybody goes to the same church. And so all these kids that went to church with him, like 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, were seeing this guy that they knew their entire lives laying there shot to death on the sidewalk. So there were like some weird things going on, but I don't know. Like, I mean, the FBI has been the FBI since J. Edgar Hoover. It hadn't changed any. It's the same organization. It's the same institution. It's doing the same shit. It's just, I mean, people are just willing to accept it, because they normalized it, and yeah. So I don't really expect much out of the FBI, to be honest. So, but
Yeah,
I mean,
everything.
they came knocking on my door asking me questions about my sense of humor and shit I say, that I don't think I'd pull a gun on them. I can say with pretty confidently I wouldn't do that. They might shoot my dogs because my dogs would want to jump on them and lick them to death, but so that's the main threat that the FBI poses to me at the moment.
Yeah, I have one dog that they would definitely want to shoot because we had a sheriff show up on the doorstep at this house, and this is our second house. Like, we actually live across the street, and this is my
Right.
man cave, and then I've got a couple of our kids live over here or stay over here now too. But so anyway, we were all next door at the main house having breakfast, and I can't remember, I had left something over here, so I walked outside to come over here, and there was a sheriff's deputy standing on the doorstep, like knocking on the door, and obviously there's nobody here. So I was like, hey, do you need something? Can I help you? It's like, that's my house. And he asked me some questions. Apparently there had been some weird shit that had gone on the night before, and the church down here on the corner was having a lock-in and saw it. And so they were asking questions about if anybody else in the neighborhood had seen any of this weird shit. And I was like, we were all inside, like nobody, my kids were all home. My wife and I are both home. Like, nobody was out of the house, so we didn't see anything. Like, sorry. I was like, you can come over next door and ask my wife some questions, but she's going to tell you the same thing. I was like, if you do come over, like, you stay on the porch. Like, I have a dog that is not friendly towards anybody who's not family, and I don't want you shooting my dog because he will not allow you in the house. And he was like, okay, that's fine. I'll stay on the porch. Like, yeah, I've got one of those dogs that he does not take kindly to strangers, and that would be the biggest threat that I would have, is if anybody entered the house with him in it, they're going to get attacked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dogs wouldn't technically attack you. They would jump on you. They would knock you over. They would lick you. And I mean, unless, I guess, if you were being aggressive. I mean, I've seen Boogie, get bow up when he around certain people, but it's rare. It's not something that happens very often. So you were talking about good news, like good things happening in the world, and trying to keep your eyes on good things. So I want to close with this, because this is something we had talking about Richmond, north of Richmond. Now, this guy's story to me is just so incredible. I was like, finally a good guy, like finally some decent human being, hardworking guy who's been freaking just pulling himself up by his bootstraps his entire life, and working his ass off to get his life in order, like all of us are trying to do at some point in time in our lives. We're just trying to get directed in the right direction and start, head charging that way. And it seems like it's finally some not, I wouldn't even say he's that interesting, but just some average Joe that got a break. And it kind of felt good. I'm not a big country fan. I thought the song was, it's all right. It's decent. It's interesting. I laughed. It made me laugh at times, like some of the lyrics. So, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to it, but if it came on the radio, I'd let it play, and I'd be like, yeah, this guy's pretty interesting guy.
Which is more than I can say for try that in a small town. Good God, every time that comes on the radio, I'm like, cannot change the station fast enough.
I actually went out of my way to listen to that because of all the hype it got around it, and I listened to it and I go, this is terrible.
It's such a bad song. I think that's like what touches my heart the most about this Anthony Oliver and Richmond, north of Richmond, is it's actually a pretty good song. Like
it's good.
it's good. It's catchy. It's like the lyrics seem sincere and genuine, whereas the try that in a small town, it feels forced. It's like it's what somebody told him rednecks want to hear, right?
Yeah, right.
And
It's like,
the first time that song came on the radio, I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Why did they even think this was a good idea to put this out?
right.
Not because it's racist or homophobic or Islamophobic or anything like that, just because it's straight up fucking bad.
Even, I mean, if it were any of those things, at least it would be interesting.
Right?
It's so
bad. And then like within I don't know, it wasn't even 2 weeks later after I'd heard it for the first time that it becomes like rage porn for the left, and then it shoots to #1 in the charts. And then literally every time I sit in a truck and turn the radio on, now I hear it. And so now I don't even listen to the radio anymore. I just listen to Pandora, where I can at least craft my own experience where I don't have to hear the things that piss me off. Like,
right.
And we're back to controlling your own environment and making sure that you're not experiencing the things that make you mad and finding the joy in the world.
Right. No, but I just thought it was such an interesting story. I thought it was so cool. You know, apparently he's in Boston this weekend for the fights up there that are happening, because he asked a question to a Q&A that some fighters were conducting. So the guys up there. So I guess he's got a little bit of money. I heard the song went up #1 on iTunes or whatever. And I listened to a couple of his other songs too. He's really not bad. He's really decent. It reminds me of like stuff my grandpa would have listened to. You know, and my grandpa, he, like during the summers, every once in a while I'd go hang out with him, and he'd bring me like bluegrass festivals and stuff like that. He played in a country band that toured around the southeast. So, you know, I mean, they did all covers, but they did go around a bit down here and got around. They were actually fairly well known. He played with the Carpenters and did some stuff on the side with them. And so, yeah, I mean, so I know it's something that I've been around. I was exposed to as a kid, that style of music. And yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. I actually thought it was pretty good.
And he has a couple other songs that arguably were better than that one. But
I like that song. I did like that song Virginia better. I really like that song Virginia. I thought it was really good.
That one, the Richmond North of Richmond, has the political message that really strikes a chord with people. So naturally, as politicized as everything is, like that's the thing that's going to kind of propel the narrative around him right now. But yeah, I mean, his other music is really good all on its own, and that's one of those good things that, like, you see the song or you hear the song and you see his story. I heard earlier today, and I haven't had a chance to verify it, but I heard earlier today that he got offered like an $8 million deal with some sort of record label and turned it down because like he felt like that was like the first step towards selling out on what he wants to do as far as his music goes. Like I said, I haven't verified that, but like to hear that and to see some of the other things that he said and the way he kind of handles himself and conducts himself. He had that big live sold out show that he'd done last weekend. And
is that the one where like, Jamie Johnson showed up and played a song with him? And yeah, that was pretty cool.
And all the clips and stuff from that, and just like he just seems like a really genuine dude. And that's really cool. And there are people that are like, all right, so how long before this becomes a sold out thing and he's singing the messages that they want him singing and stuff like that. I'm like, why do we have to go there? Just like listen to the stuff that he's got out.
Yeah, just enjoy the moment and be happy
Enjoy
for the
it.
guy. I'm happy for the guy. Like I was like, that was my first thing. I was like, this is such a cool story. You know, it's finally somebody who's like getting attention and kind of going viral and being this like quote unquote overnight sensation that is actually doing something. Like it seems like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like something stupid like Paris Hilton or the Paul brothers, or like what, these weirdos, these people that get famous that you're like, what is this? You're famous for being famous, but you're only famous for being famous after you're famous. What were you doing before you were famous? I don't understand this whole process, And so, yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm he's creative, he's doing something interesting, and I think it's, yay for him, man. And it's a good story. He's recovered drug addict, atheist turned Christian, and turned his whole life around. And good, like, be happy for the guy, especially in a poverty ridden area like where he lives.
It's okay to embrace some good in the world and not try to find a way to twist it into how could it possibly go bad. Like,
right. Yeah.
Maybe it won't. maybe optimism isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, I am a optimistic realist. Like, I think I always go into everything thinking that it's going to work out because I'm going to find a way to make it work out. Like, it's going to be all right. And even if it's not all right, it's going to be all right. Like, we're going to get through it. We don't have to look for everything to ultimately end in tragedy and destruction. Like, if it does, guess what? We can still rebuild out of that and make something good out of that. It's I just watched The Crow the other day with my daughter. My daughter and I have been going back and watching movies from the 90s and early 2000s that
that's a good one.
I loved, and she has never seen because she's 12, 13. So we watched The Crow the other day, and there's that line, "It can't rain every day," that he
can't
says
rain all the
Lord.
time.
Yeah.
It's
gotta stop at some point. Like,
yeah.
It's gonna work out, and it's okay to be a little bit optimistic. Like, I'm an optimistic realist. I know that things are gonna go wrong from time to time, but it's all right. We move on. We can still make good out of what went wrong. You and I've had multiple conversations about our divorces and our kids and all of our those situations. I've been fired from multiple jobs. Every time that I've been fired, I ended up finding a better job that I liked even more than the one that I got fired from. Like, usually I got fired at the time that I had hit a point that I was so fucking miserable, I wasn't sure if I could keep going back, and then I'd get fired, and then I'd somehow end up getting offered another
that
job.
Almost sounds like self-sabotage. Like, I don't want to be here anyway, so I'm going to find a way to get fired.
I only did that once. I only did that once. That was pretty messed up the way that hand went down. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, like, every time that I've had something bad like that happen, it's ended up working out for the better. And I really do think that life is what you make of it, and I will never be a victim of my circumstance. I will always make my own circumstances, and they will always be good because I'm not going to look for the bad.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to end this one. This was a fun one.
Heck yeah.
It's
always fun talking to you.
Yeah, we always have a good time. We do this more often.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I'm going to end this recording right here.